Most people think trust is about character. It is not. Character matters. But it is often the last thing you actually see. What you see first are stories. Confidence. Kindness. Shared values. Familiarity. All the signals that make someone feel safe before they have earned that feeling. The greatest mistakes are rarely caused by trusting bad people. They are caused by trusting the wrong evidence. Have you ever wondered why intelligent people fall for charming liars? Why successful leaders surround themselves with people who eventually betray them? Why some relationships collapse without warning, while others remain unshakable through decades of pressure? The answer is uncomfortable. People do not reveal themselves through promises. They reveal themselves through incentives, patterns, status, and the invisible games they play when they think no one is paying attention. The books in this video are not manuals for becoming suspicious of everyone. They are lenses. Once you look through them, ordinary conversations begin to reveal hidden structures. Small decisions become meaningful. Trust stops feeling like a gamble and starts becoming a discipline. By the end of this journey, you will not simply know more books. You will see people differently. And once that happens, it becomes very difficult to return to the way you used to judge the world. If you want ideas that make you calmer, sharper, and harder to mislead, consider subscribing. Not to collect more information, but to develop clearer perception. Quiet knowledge has always been more valuable than loud certainty. Now, let's step inside a hidden library where each book removes another illusion about trust, power, and human behavior. Trust is often treated as an emotion. Something you feel. Something you either have or you do not. But beneath every friendship, business partnership, family bond, or political alliance lies an invisible game that emotions alone cannot explain. People respond to incentives they rarely admit. They protect identities they rarely question. They compete for status without realizing they are competing at all. And they justify almost every decision with stories that sound noble, even when the real motives remain hidden. This is why experience alone does not always produce wisdom. Many people repeat the same mistakes for decades because they continue looking at behavior from the surface. They remember what people said instead of what consistently drove their actions. The books you are about to explore do something different. None of them simply teach you how to judge others. They teach you how to see beneath appearances. One reveals hidden motives behind generosity. Another exposes why cooperation succeeds where kindness fails. Others uncover psychological games, cognitive blind spots, persuasion, reputation, and the moral instincts that quietly shape every human relationship. Individually, each book sharpens one part of your perception. Together, they create something far more valuable. A new way of seeing. The kind of strategic clarity that allows you to recognize trust not as a feeling to be followed, but as a pattern to be observed. Because the invisible game has always been there. The only question is whether you know how to see it. Book 1, The Elephant in the Brain, Kevin Simler and Robin Hanson. Most people think honesty begins with what people say. This book begins somewhere else. It asks a far more unsettling question: what if even we do not fully understand why we do what we do? The elephant in the brain is not about deception in the obvious sense. It is about hidden motives. The quiet incentives beneath generosity, ambition, morality, and even friendship. It argues that human beings are remarkably skilled at disguising self-interest, not only from others, but from themselves. That idea changes everything. When someone helps you, the visible act may be genuine. But the invisible reward might be status, approval, influence, or belonging. None of these necessarily make the act dishonest. They simply remind you that human behavior almost always has layers. Most people never notice this because they stop at intention. They ask, did they mean well? They rarely ask, what does this action reward? The difference is profound. A colleague who constantly offers assistance may also be positioning themselves closer to power. A generous acquaintance may quietly be collecting social debt. A charismatic leader may sincerely believe in a cause while also enjoying the admiration it brings. The real danger is not hidden motives. It is pretending they do not exist. When you ignore incentives, you become easy to manipulate. You mistake performance for character and confidence for sincerity. You assume that because a story sounds noble, it must explain the whole truth. The mirror moment arrives when you turn this lens toward yourself. How many of your own decisions were completely selfless? How often have you explained your choices with principles when comfort, recognition, or security played a larger role than you admitted? That question is uncomfortable because it dissolves the illusion that deception belongs only to other people. It lives quietly inside everyone. Once you see this, you stop judging people by isolated actions. You begin watching for repeated incentives. What consistently drives them? What do they protect when pressure rises? What changes when no one is watching? Those patterns reveal far more than words ever will. Upgrade rule: never ask only what someone did. Ask what their behavior consistently rewards. Incentives are often more truthful than explanations. Book 2, The Evolution of Cooperation, Robert Axelrod. Most people believe trust is built on kindness. But kindness without structure is fragile. Robert Axelrod approached trust from an unexpected direction. Instead of philosophy or psychology, he studied strategy. Through repeated game theory experiments, he searched for one question: why do strangers choose to cooperate instead of betray each other? The answer was surprisingly simple. Trust survives when future consequences matter. The most successful strategy was neither ruthless nor naive. It began with cooperation, responded firmly to betrayal, and remained willing to rebuild trust if the other side changed. This is not merely mathematics. It is a hidden law of human relationships. Ordinary people often mistake generosity for reliability. They assume that agreeable personalities make trustworthy partners. Yet history, business, and everyday life suggest something different. Reliable people are predictable. Their principles remain stable because they expect to meet the future. They protect relationships that extend beyond immediate gain. Untrustworthy people chase the short term. They sacrifice tomorrow for today's advantage. That pattern appears everywhere. In business deals built on inflated promises. In friendships sustained only while convenient. In leaders who trade long-term credibility for immediate applause. The invisible game is not about affection. It is about time. People who value tomorrow behave differently today. The mirror moment is difficult because it asks you to examine your own commitments. Do you act with integrity only when someone is watching? Or because you expect your future self to inherit the consequences of today's choices? Many betrayals begin long before the moment of betrayal. They begin with a mindset that sees every interaction as isolated instead of connected. Once you understand this, trust becomes less emotional and more observable. Watch how people treat relationships that no longer benefit them. Notice whether they keep small promises when there is little to gain. Observe how they respond after conflict rather than during comfort. Character reveals itself most clearly when cooperation becomes costly. Upgrade rule: trust people whose decisions consistently protect the future. Long-term thinking is one of the strongest signals of genuine reliability. Book 3, Games People Play, Eric Berne. Most conversations appear ordinary. But beneath them, invisible games are often unfolding. Eric Berne argued that much of human interaction follows recurring psychological patterns. We are not always speaking to exchange information. We are often competing for validation, avoiding responsibility, testing loyalty, or protecting fragile identities. The words are visible. The game is hidden. Someone asks for advice, only to reject every solution. Another constantly becomes the victim, ensuring others remain rescuers. A colleague offers compliments that quietly establish superiority instead of respect. These patterns repeat because they satisfy emotional needs that remain unspoken. Most people never notice them. They react to the dialogue instead of recognizing the script. Once you begin seeing these recurring games, relationships become easier to understand. You stop wondering why certain conversations leave you exhausted. You recognize why some people create unnecessary conflict even when peace is available. The real objective was never the argument itself. It was the emotional payoff hidden beneath it. This is why manipulation is rarely dramatic. It often arrives disguised as familiarity. The same cycles. The same emotional hooks. The same predictable endings. The mirror moment is perhaps the hardest of all. What role do you repeatedly play? The dependable rescuer? The misunderstood genius? The person who avoids difficult conversations until resentment quietly replaces honesty? Every recurring role provides something. Sympathy. Control. Safety. Identity. And every role has a cost. Once you see your own script, you regain the freedom to step outside it. The hidden structure of trust is not simply finding honest people. It is refusing to participate in dishonest patterns. People who cannot leave destructive games eventually mistake them for reality. Those who recognize the script can choose a different ending. Upgrade rule: pay less attention to isolated conversations and more attention to recurring patterns. When the same emotional cycle repeats, you are no longer witnessing a moment. You are witnessing a game. Book 4, The 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene. Most people think power corrupts. A more precise truth is that power reveals. It reveals what people were willing to hide when they needed your approval. The 48 Laws of Power is often misunderstood as a handbook for manipulation. That is the surface reading. Beneath it lies something far more valuable. It is a field guide to recognizing the strategies people adopt when status, influence, and ambition become more important than honesty. This book is not asking you to become ruthless. It is asking you to stop assuming everyone else is harmless. Power changes the incentives around every relationship. A trusted colleague becomes a competitor after a promotion. A loyal partner begins protecting their position. A mentor who once shared knowledge starts withholding it because scarcity creates leverage. Most people interpret these shifts as sudden changes in personality. They are not. The pressure simply exposed priorities that were always there. What this reveals is uncomfortable. You rarely know someone's character when they need something from you. You begin to know it when they no longer do. Watch what happens when people gain authority. Do they become more generous or more possessive? Do they elevate capable people or eliminate perceived threats? Do they reward truth or reward agreement? These are not management styles. They are character tests. The mirror moment is unavoidable. How do you behave when you hold the advantage? When someone depends on your approval, your recommendation, or your silence. Power is not measured by how you treat equals. It is measured by how you treat those who cannot repay you. Once you see this, you stop being impressed by charm during the climb. You become interested in conduct after the summit. Upgrade rule: never judge someone only by how they behave while seeking power. Judge them by how they behave once they no longer need your permission. Book 5, Thinking, Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman. Most people believe poor judgment comes from a lack of intelligence. Daniel Kahneman spent decades proving otherwise. The greatest errors are often committed by intelligent people who trust the speed of their own thinking. Thinking, Fast and Slow introduces two modes of perception. One is fast, intuitive, and effortless. The other is slow, analytical, and demanding. Both are necessary. But the first often reaches conclusions long before the second has a chance to question them. This matters because trust is frequently decided in a fast system. A confident voice feels competent. A familiar face feels safe. Someone who resembles us appears more trustworthy than they may actually be. The mind fills gaps with stories before evidence arrives. Most people never notice this because intuition feels like certainty. It rarely announces itself as a guess. That is why first impressions become difficult to abandon. Confirmation bias quietly protects them. Every new piece of evidence is filtered through an opinion that formed in seconds. The invisible game is not only what others hide. It is what your own mind hides from you. The mirror moment begins with a difficult admission. How many people have you trusted because they made you feel understood? How many have you dismissed because they challenged your assumptions instead of confirming them? Your greatest vulnerability may not be another person's deception. It may be your confidence in your own perception. Strategic clarity begins with intellectual humility. The willingness to say, "I may be wrong," is not weakness. It is one of the strongest defenses against manipulation. Once you understand this, you become slower in the moments that matter most. You ask for evidence before conclusions. You allow patterns to emerge before assigning trust. Upgrade rule: never confuse immediate certainty with accurate judgment. The slower conclusion is often the safer one. Book 6, Influence, Robert Cialdini. Most people imagine manipulation as something obvious. A lie. A threat. An act of coercion. In reality, the most effective influence feels natural. That is precisely why it works. Robert Cialdini revealed that persuasion often follows predictable psychological principles. Reciprocity. Social proof. Authority. Scarcity. Commitment. Liking. None of these are inherently unethical. They become dangerous only when you fail to recognize them. Consider how easily obligation is created by a small favor. How quickly confidence grows when everyone else appears convinced. How often expertise is assumed because someone wears the symbols of authority rather than earning genuine credibility. Most people think they make independent decisions. More often, they inherit the decisions of the crowd. The hidden structure is subtle. People rarely force you to trust them. They arrange the environment so that trust feels like your own idea. The mirror moment is not about asking whether you have been manipulated. It is asking how often you have persuaded yourself. How many purchases, friendships, beliefs, or opportunities felt like free choices when they were quietly shaped by invisible pressures? Recognizing influence does not make you cynical. It makes you attentive. You begin separating confidence from credibility. Popularity from wisdom. Urgency from importance. You stop reacting to carefully designed signals and start looking for substance beneath them. Because genuine trust does not depend on psychological shortcuts. It survives even after the shortcuts disappear. Upgrade rule: whenever someone seems immediately trustworthy, pause and ask, "Am I responding to evidence, or to influence?" That single question will protect you more often than instinct alone. Book 7, The Road to Character, David Brooks. Most people think the safest people to trust are the most accomplished. The impressive resume. The confident voice. The visible success. But competence and character are not the same achievement. The road to character begins with a distinction that quietly changes how you evaluate people. There are the qualities that build a career, and there are the qualities that build a life. The first earn admiration. The second earn trust. Modern culture rewards visibility. It celebrates ambition, confidence, and the ability to stand above the crowd. Yet the traits that sustain relationships rarely demand attention. Humility. Self-restraint. Loyalty. Honesty when deception would be easier. These virtues are difficult to display because they are most evident when no audience exists. Most people miss this because success creates a powerful illusion. We assume that excellence in one area signals excellence everywhere. A brilliant entrepreneur must be wise. A respected leader must be honorable. A persuasive speaker must be sincere. But history tells a different story. Talent often earns opportunity. Character determines what happens after it. The mirror moment arrives when you ask yourself a difficult question. Have you ever confused admiration with trust? Have you mistaken someone's achievements for evidence of their integrity? It is an easy mistake to make because visible success is measurable. Character is not. It reveals itself through countless ordinary decisions that rarely become headlines. Notice who accepts responsibility without being forced. Notice who remains consistent when recognition disappears. Notice who protects another person's dignity even when there is no reward for doing so. These are quiet signals. But they are among the most reliable. Once you see this, your attention shifts away from brilliance and toward consistency. You stop asking who is most impressive. You begin asking who remains principled when admiration is no longer at stake. Upgrade rule: never mistake competence for character. Trust the person whose values remain steady when applause fades. Book 8, Poor Charlie's Almanac, Charlie Munger. Most people think reputation is something you manage. Charlie Munger treated it as something you earn. Not through image. Through repetition. Poor Charlie's Almanac is filled with lessons about investing, decision-making, and rational thinking. But beneath every principle lies a quieter philosophy. The highest returns belong to people who can be trusted over long periods of time. Munger understood that every decision compounds. So does every compromise. A single dishonest act may create immediate profit. But it quietly damages the one asset that becomes more valuable with every passing year: credibility. Most people never notice this because they measure outcomes too narrowly. They ask what a decision gained today instead of what it destroyed tomorrow. The invisible game is larger than any single opportunity. Every interaction either strengthens or weakens the expectations others place upon you. That expectation becomes your reputation. And reputation is a form of invisible capital. It enters the room before you do. It determines which opportunities arrive without being requested and which doors remain permanently closed. The mirror moment is uncomfortable because it asks whether your private decisions match your public identity. Would people describe you the same way if they judged you only by the promises you kept when no one could verify them? Would your reputation survive if image disappeared and only behavior remained? This is where trust becomes strategic. Reliable people do not protect their reputation because they fear judgment. They protect it because they understand that trust compounds just as wealth does. Small acts of integrity accumulate. So do small acts of convenience. Years later, both become impossible to hide. Upgrade rule: treat your reputation as a long-term investment. Protect it in moments when no one else is paying attention, because those moments determine how you will be trusted when everything is at stake. Book 9, The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt. Most people believe dangerous people know they are dangerous. Jonathan Haidt reveals something far more unsettling. Most people believe they are the heroes of their own story. The Righteous Mind explores the moral instincts that shape human judgment. It argues that reason often follows intuition, not the other way around. We rarely begin with evidence and arrive at belief. More often, we begin with belonging and then construct reasons that defend it. This changes how you understand trust. The greatest threat is not always dishonesty. It is unquestioned certainty. People become capable of extraordinary kindness toward those they consider part of their group. Yet the same loyalty can justify cruelty toward those they believe stand outside it. History has repeated this pattern across nations, institutions, families, and friendships. The problem is not conviction. It is conviction that no longer welcomes correction. Most people miss this because sincerity feels trustworthy. They assume that someone who passionately believes they are right must also be committed to the truth. But sincerity and accuracy are not the same thing. A person can be deeply honest about what they believe and profoundly mistaken about reality. The mirror moment asks perhaps the hardest question in this entire library. What beliefs would you defend simply because they are yours? What communities, ideologies, or identities have become so central that questioning them feels like betrayal? The answer reveals where your perception may be most vulnerable. Once you understand this, you stop judging people solely by the strength of their convictions. You begin watching how they respond to disagreement. Can they revise their views when presented with better evidence? Can they remain respectful without demanding agreement? Can they value truth more than victory? These are the quiet marks of intellectual integrity. And they are among the rarest forms of trustworthiness. Upgrade rule: trust people who are willing to update their beliefs without abandoning their principles. Loyalty to truth is stronger than loyalty to identity. When these books are examined together, a deeper pattern appears. None of them are truly about trust. They are about perception. Each one removes a different illusion that keeps people vulnerable. The elephant in the brain teaches you that motives are rarely as simple as they appear. The evolution of cooperation shifts your attention from promises to incentives that survive over time. Games people play exposes the emotional scripts hidden inside ordinary conversations. The 48 Laws of Power reminds you that authority often reveals priorities that comfort conceals. Then the focus turns inward. Thinking, fast and slow warns that your own mind is capable of misleading you before anyone else has the chance. Influence reveals how easily certainty can be manufactured. The road to character separates quiet integrity from impressive performance. Poor Charlie's Almanac teaches that reputation is not public image but the accumulated consequence of consistent decisions. And the Righteous Mind explains why sincere people can still become dangerous when loyalty to an identity outweighs loyalty to reality. Viewed separately, these books offer useful insights. Viewed together, they become something else. A map. Not of human goodness or human evil, but of predictable human behavior. The illusion they dismantle is the belief that trust can be reduced to instinct. It cannot. Instinct notices appearances. Wisdom notices patterns. The hidden structure beneath every relationship is remarkably consistent. People move toward incentives. They protect identities. They repeat emotional habits. They justify their choices with stories that feel noble. They reveal themselves through what they repeatedly reward, especially when no one is asking them to explain. This realization changes the questions you ask. Instead of wondering whether someone seems honest, you begin asking what consistently guides their decisions. Instead of asking whether someone is intelligent, you ask whether they can admit when they are wrong. Instead of asking whether someone is loyal, you ask what they remain loyal to when there is something valuable to gain by leaving. These are quieter questions. But they produce clearer answers. Strategic clarity is not learning to distrust everyone. It is learning to trust with open eyes. Because the strongest protection against betrayal is not suspicion. It is perception. The people who navigate life with quiet confidence are rarely those who have never been deceived. They are the ones who learn to see beyond appearances. They understand that trust is not built from charming conversations, impressive resumes, shared opinions, or confident promises. It is built from patterns that remain consistent across time, pressure, temptation, and success. That is the hidden lesson connecting every book in this library. Not how to become cynical. How to become difficult to mislead. If this way of thinking resonates with you, subscribe to Seth Traw Books. Every video is an invitation into another hidden framework, another forgotten idea, another lens that helps you see the invisible game behind ordinary behavior. And in the next essay, we'll explore a different question. Why do intelligent people repeatedly surrender their freedom without realizing it? Until then, remember this. The world rarely hides the truth. It hides it in patterns that most people never learn to see. Read deeply. Observe quietly. See clearly.